It's Saturday, September 28, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 Week in Review. My name is Kingsley Bryan. We will take a look at some of the major stories for the week, beginning Monday, September 23 to Friday, September 27, 2019. On Monday, Minister of Finance Winston Jordan, speaking on the sidelines of a media tour of Geniquip, disclosed that although the government may not be able to return to Parliament, public servants can expect a large salary increase in 2019. The minister assured this will be possible without returning to Parliament.
Public servants will receive a salary increase for 2019. All right? We don't have to go back to Parliament to get that.
And
we would have loved to go back to Parliament if we have to end up paying a salary increase that was beyond what we have in the budget. All right? But for the time being, since the Parliament will virtually shut down soon, then we'll have to consider what we have.
Jordan said apart from the promised increases this year, public servants can expect an even bigger increase in 2020. The minister said, although there has been much anxiety in relation to the non-payment of bonuses, it is all aiding the long-term development plan, since it is government intention to remove it as a concept.
Bonus wasn't a concept that we treated with in the public service, because you will know you work in the private sector. Many of you work in the private sector. You only get a bonus when targets are achieved, when sales, and revenues and so on are playing. We concentrate in public service more on providing a viable, livable wage.
The minister said government has not achieved this aim fully, but significant strides have been made to ensure public servants receive sustainable wages. In his view, an increased salary offsets any amount of bonus.
I, as a Minister of Finance, will tell you easily, I will much prefer to pay you a bonus than a salary increase. Simply because a bonus is a one-off payment. My budget could easily take on a one-off payment. It is not so easy when you have to sustain the payment month after month after month after month.
Jordan said he will most likely consider repeating what was done last year in the absence of a sitting parliament. The AFC has since called on the political opposition to return to Parliament to conclude certain financial businesses of the House. But the PPP is adamant that Parliament should have long been dissolved. And we'll tell you now that health officials in Guyana were proud to announce that Guyana is the only Caribbean country to achieve the first 90% of the United Nations program on HIV and AIDS 1990 target, as the Public Health Minister Valden Lawrence launched this year's World AIDS Day activity. More in this report.
The UN AIDS 90 target by 2020 was developed in an effort to combat the HIV and AIDS pandemic globally. The simple and achievable triple plan outlines that by 2020, 90% of all people living with HIV will know their HIV status, 90% of all people with diagnosed HIV infection will receive sustained antiretroviral therapy, and 90% of all people receiving antiretroviral therapy will have viral suppression. Today, the Public Health Ministry reported that Guyana is currently the only Caribbean country to reach the first 90%. This announcement was made today at the PAHO boardroom, where Public Health Minister Valden Lawrence disclosed this year's theme for World AIDS Day 2019. Minister Lawrence stated that of the estimated 8,200 people living with HIV in 2018, 90% know their status, 73% are on treatment, and 81% have achieved viral suppression.
Our task remains challenging, even as all stakeholders combine their efforts to accelerate the progress in reducing new infections and AIDS-related deaths in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Guyana's national response has been aligned to UN global targets, and we are working assiduously to meet those targets of 90-90-90 by 2020. We cannot be complacent.
To be celebrated under the theme Communities Make the Difference, community involvement was highlighted as the key factor to combat the pandemic in Guyana. According to Minister Lawrence, communities contribute to the AIDS response in many different ways.
Their leadership and advocacy ensure that the response remains relevant and grounded, keeping people at the center and leaving absolutely no one behind. World AIDS Day offers an important platform to highlight the role of communities and civil society. Strong advocacy by communities is needed more than ever to ensure that AIDS remains on the political agenda, that human rights are respected, and that decision makers and implementers are held accountable.
World AIDS Day takes place on December 1 each year. It is an opportunity for people worldwide to unite in the fight against HIV, to show support for people living with HIV, and to commemorate those who have died from an AIDS-related illness. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Also, a family of 5 from the Bahamas arrived at the Cheddi-Jagan International Airport on Sunday evening and have plans to resettle here. Minister of Citizenship Winston Felix, who was at hand to receive the family, said this is the second batch to have returned to these shores following the devastating hurricane. The Cooper family, Vanessa Tate, her reputed husband Steve Cooper Sr., and their 3 children, Stevie Cooper Jr., Stephen Cooper, and Steve Cooper, arrived at approximately 2200 hours. Minister Felix and the Coopers are just one of the many families and individuals who have indicated desire to return to Guyana. The minister said following an interview with the Coopers, all necessary procedures regarding documentation will be dealt with.
Initially, we had a list of about 102 persons indicating an interest. Then I think it broke down to about 28. 5 came last week. 5 have arrived tonight, and 2 are to come so far next week. We don't know if others will join that list, but so far we know about 2 others are expected to return to Guyana on this very flight next Sunday night.
Vanessa spoke with the press and shared her experience during the time of the hurricane.
Pertaining to storm-wise, horrible. It's nothing that no one wants to actually live through. Like, speaking about it, you'll get an impression, but actually going through it, it's an absolute difference. You know, like, it's a reality. Like, it's scary. We know people that became not just friends, but I would call family. Bahamians that actually entire families died. Our house, the entire roof came off. So it's like living out of a scary movie. It's like literally going through a scary movie.
On September 15, the Grimman family was the first to arrive home following the devastating ordeal and was greeted by Minister of State Don Hastings Williams, Minister of Foreign Affairs Dr. Karen Cummins, Minister Felix, and Director General of the Civil Defense Commission, Lieutenant Colonel Crystal Craig. Hurricane Dorian, a Category 5 storm, pounded the Abaco Island and Grand Bahama during a 3-day period, leaving at least 43 people dead and hundreds missing. It also left behind enormous infrastructural damage across the island. There are about 80 Guyanese families living on the affected islands. The government, through the Civil Defense Commission, is coordinating relief efforts for Guyanese living there. And on Tuesday, convicted drug trafficker Shahid Roger Khan was released from police custody after being detained for more than the mandatory 72 hours since he was taken into custody by the lawmen. More in this report. Roger Khan's attorney, Glenn Hanuman, has since relayed that his client was released on $200,000 station bail and has been ordered to report to the Criminal Investigations Department next week. Hanuman said that his client was not charged with any offense. Following his arrival and subsequent detention, Hanuman had expressed that the move may have been political. since there is no evidence to suggest that his client was involved in any murders. Shortly after his arrival in Guyana, after being deported from the United States, Khan was whisked away by ranks of the Guyana police force, who later relayed to Khan's attorney that he was being held for questioning into the September 2005 murder of well-known boxing coach Donald Allison and the murder of political activist Ronald Waddell, who was killed in January 2006. Allison was killed outside the Ricola Boxing Gym in Agricola on the east bank of Demerara on September 8, 2005, while Waddell was gunned down execution style outside his Sobrianville, Georgetown residence on January 30, 2006. On Saturday last, Khan's attorney had indicated that he was informed by senior police ranks and officials at the office of the DPP that the police are without substantial evidence that can directly link Khan to any other crime, and as such, he was anticipating his release from custody. The issue first came to the fore on June 15, 2006, after Khan, along with 3 of his bodyguards, were arrested by Surinamese police in an apparent sting operation in Paramaribo. Surinamese officials had relayed that Khan's arrest resulted in the country seeing their largest drug haul for that period, after confiscating over 200 kilograms of cocaine during the operation. Things took an unanticipated turn when, instead of being deported to Guyana, Khan was flown to Trinidad, where he was directly handed over to the U.S. authorities. In October 2009, Khan was sentenced in a Brooklyn courtroom to 40 years imprisonment for trafficking large amounts of cocaine in the United States of America, witness tampering, and illegal firearm possession. The sentences were ordered to be served concurrently, which meant that he was only expected to serve 15 years. But he spent less than 10 years behind bars and was ordered deported. After serving his sentence, Khan was officially released from prison on July 8, 2019, and placed in the custody of the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, and was being held at the Chrome Detention Facility in Miami before his deportation. Khan's trial in the U.S., though revealing, veered away from the murders he may or may not have committed, and centered mainly on his drug trafficking ring. The rest is nothing but speculation, since established commission of inquiries have failed to link Khan to the murder of Waddell. For Globespan 24x7 News, Kingsley Bryan.
Good evening, I'm Whitney Prasad, and here are the headlines for your news recap for September 23rd to 28th. U.S.-based Guyanese teen killed in Orange County shooting. Tobago suffers as Tropical Storm Karen floods the island. New York man dies as his 5-year-old daughter is injured after jumping in front of a train. 30 killed in an illegal mine near the Libyan border. And Pakistan and India Prime Minister to face off at the UN General Assembly. Now for the news in details. International interest in Guyana continues to grow as the country is poised to become a major player in the oil and gas industry. Many airlines are now targeting the South American country, with Qatar Airways being the latest to sign an agreement to start operations. The agreement was signed by Chairman of the Aviation Civil Authority Qatar, Abdul bin Nasser, Turki Al Subeh, and Director General of GCAA, Egbert Fiel. The agreement will permit Qatar national carrier Qatar Airways to operate any number of passengers and cargo flights, as well as cooperation between the carriers concerned. It will also permit QA to have an operations center in Guyana to fly to any country in the region. Police in Orange County, New York are looking for 2 men who they say may be responsible for the death of Chelsea Debitin, a 21-year-old woman of Guyanese parentage. According to reports, the woman, who is a recent college graduate, was at the time visiting her boyfriend at his family's apartment. Police said the victim's boyfriend was also shot. He's hospitalized and is expected to recover. New Windsor Police Chief Michael Farbent said local police are working along with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, as well as the state police, in search of the perpetrators. And residents at the southwestern tip of Tobago have been badly affected by severe flooding caused by Tropical Storm Karen. The storm hit the island on September 21st and has worsened since. The Tobago Emergency Management Agency, TEMA, said in a statement that residents have reported blown-off roofs, fallen trees and utility poles in the roadways, flooding, strong winds, and damage to residential and commercial properties. Strong winds downed trees and power lines, blocking roads and causing power outages, and all schools have been closed. 9 shelters were set up to house families displaced by the severe weather. Several boats were damaged in the rough seas in the Plymouth area where a jetty was destroyed. Storm surge and high waves also caused coastal flooding, damaging some buildings in the area. The worst of the flooding was seen in Scarborough, where at least 1 house was destroyed, and along the coast in lowlands where several people were trapped in their homes. A man is dead and his 5-year-old daughter was injured after police say he jumped in front of a train in the Bronx, New York while holding on to her. Police say the 45-year-old man jumped onto the tracks while holding his daughter and was hit by a southbound 4 train. Medics pronounced him dead at the scene. Sources say the child was not hit by the train. She was taken to Jacoby Medical Center to be treated for scratches. 2 others were also treated. They may have jumped on the tracks to help the young girl. If you're struggling with thoughts of suicide or worried about a friend or a loved one, help is available. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, that's 8255, or text TALK to 7471, or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org for free confidential emotional support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even if it feels like it, you are not alone. The Donald Trump administration has released details of a phone conversation in July that has triggered a U.S. impeachment inquiry against the president. According to the notes, Donald Trump asked the Ukrainian leader to look into corruption claims involving the son of Joe Biden, Trump's possible rival in next year's presidential election. The official account of a half-hour July call heard a surprising exchange of requests and pledges, including some unrelated to Biden. The summary was released a day after House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the Democratic-led chamber was launching an official impeachment inquiry, setting up a dramatic political showdown that threatens Trump's presidency as he campaigns for re-election in 2020. In July, Trump froze military aid to Ukraine, but he has insisted that this was not used to put pressure on the new government in Kyiv. Under the U.S. Constitution, a president can be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, a procedure that can lead to removal from office. A narco sub carrying 12,000 pounds of cocaine worth more than $165 million has been seized by the U.S. Coast Guard, authorities said. The 40-foot-long vessel was headed towards the U.S. earlier this month when it was stopped in the Pacific Ocean. Crew members aboard the cutter Valiant intercepted the drug-laden, self-propelled semi-submersible during a routine patrol in international waters. They apprehended 4 suspected drug smugglers on board. The submarine was originally detected by Maritime Patrol aircraft before the Valiant crew was sent to intercept it by the Joint Interagency Task Force South. The team arrived after sunset and was successful by early morning with the help of the Colombian Navy. And Canada's Conservative leader Andrew Scheer on Thursday pledged a judicial inquiry into the Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's role in trying to prevent a corporate corruption trial if he beats the incumbent in the next month's national election. Scheer went on the attack during a campaign stopping Trudeau's own Quebec constituency, which is also close to the headquarters of SNC, the engineering and constructing company at the heart of the scandal. Trudeau denies any wrongdoing and says he was trying to save jobs by urging his former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to consider an out-of-court settlement. The Prime Minister did not fully waive cabinet confidence, which has limited testimony from several people, including Wilson herself, who was removed from her job. And as we continue to follow what's happening in the United Kingdom, parliamentarian and angry lawmakers has accused Prime Minister Boris Johnson of whipping up violence and division with his charged language about opponents of Brexit, and the Speaker of the House of Commons pleaded for an end to the toxic atmosphere. But government and parliament remained at loggerheads as lawmakers rejected a request to adjourn for a week so that Johnson's Conservatives can attend the government's party annual conference. It was the latest sign of the mistrust and animosity that have consumed British politics since the country narrowly voted in 2016 to leave the European Union. 3 years later, Britain and its politicians remain bitterly divided over how or whether to leave the 28-nation bloc. And a landslide at an illegal gold mine in Chad has killed about 30 people. This is according to a government minister. The mine in the region near the Libyan border collapsed early on Tuesday, and more victims might still be buried in the rubble. The area has witnessed rapid growth in illegal mining in recent years, often by refugees from Sudan looking for quick money to head to Europe or by rebels fighting in the army. Unsafe methods and a lack of oversight mean accidents are common at mines in Africa, where impoverished communities seek a share of the vast resources that are usually dug up by international companies, processed and sent overseas. Last June, more than 40 people died when a part of Glencore copper and cobalt mine collapsed in southeast Congo. And finally, to end the news, amid heightened tension between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Pakistani counterpart Imran Khan, the two are likely to face each other at the United Nations General Assembly on Friday. The Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan warned the United Nations Friday that his country's dispute with India over Kashmir could escalate into an all-out nuclear war that would have consequences for the world. In a fiery speech lasting 50 minutes, Khan said India could unleash a bloodbath in the Muslim-majority territory as the nuclear-armed rivals took center stage at the UN Assembly. His heated rhetoric stood in stark contrast to India's Prime Minister address as an hour earlier when the Hindu nationalist leader touted domestic successes but made only an oblique reference to terrorism, taken to mean Pakistan. And that's your news recap for today. For a look at these and other stories, you can visit our Facebook page, our YouTube page for more news on what's happening around the globe. I am Whitney Prasad. Have a great weekend.
Also on Tuesday, the Association for Democracy and Human Rights, Guyana, along with opposition People Progressive Party supporters on Monday evening, held a candlelight vigil and protest at President Granger attended the 70th anniversary celebration of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Shakima Day was there and filed this report.
Staying true to their word of taking the protest wherever the president goes, opposition People's Progressive Party supporters last evening partnered with the Association for Democracy and Human Rights Guyana and held a candlelight vigil and protested, reiterating their call for an election state to be announced. The president was at the time attending the 70th anniversary celebration of the founding of the People's Republic of China at the Arthur Chung Convention Center. The protest was spread out to 3 areas as police in riot gear cordoned off a wide section, preventing the protesters and even reporters from getting close to the convention center.
What we want! Election! 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 So whether it's day or night, wherever he's located, we will find him.
PPP presidential candidate Irfan Ali expressed concerns over the heavy security for a candlelight vigil.
Immediately. What we found tonight when he came was a most disturbing situation. The sweet scent of democracy has been overtaken by the sour stench of dictatorship. That is what has happened in our country today. Look at the level of force that is used against peaceful Guyanese with a candlelight in their hands in support of democracy.
PPPC's frontman Bharat Jagdeo was also on the protest line. He told the media that the president was blatantly turning a deaf ear to the Constitution.
We have gone beyond constitutional rule and that it would affect all of our country. The statement from the US and the others pointed out how it would affect our economy, investments, international assistance. And yet, this president, having said to the nation that all he is doing is waiting on GCOM to inform him about a date for elections, is still unprepared to call an early election. And we want an early election called now by Granger, not any election date, because that's what I think they want to hang on to and probably let the time drift again, so that he thinks that we may not be able to sustain this.
The protests remained peaceful until residents from the area came and belted out explicits on the protesters. Members of the international community, the Commonwealth, AmCham, the Guyana Bar Association and the Private Sector Commission have issued similar calls for election date to be named. Reporting for Globespan 24x7 News, Shikima Day.
Meanwhile, after several months since an application was made with the International Court of Justice, the court has responded announcing that oral hearings in the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy will commence in March 2020. Find out more in this report.
The International Court of Justice issued an announcement that the oral hearing for the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy will begin March next year to determine whether the court has legal jurisdiction over the case filed by Guyana. In the official statement released by the Foreign Affairs Ministry earlier today, it highlighted that the government welcomes the notification by the ICJ, open quote, that the oral hearing on jurisdiction in its case against Venezuela will be held in The Hague from March 23rd to the 27th, 2020, close quote. Guyana is seeking to obtain from the court a final and binding judgment that the 1899 arbitral award, which established the location of the land boundary between then British Guyana and Venezuela, remains valid and binding, and that Guyana's Essequibo region belongs to Guyana and not Venezuela. It was mentioned that Guyana brought its case to the court following the decision by the Secretary General of the United Nations in January 2018 that the controversy between Guyana and Venezuela should be decided by the International Court of Justice. In taking his decision, the Secretary General was exercising the power vested in him in the 1966 Geneva Agreement between Guyana, Venezuela, and the United Kingdom to decide how the controversy should be settled. Venezuela has claimed in a letter to the court that the Secretary General exceeded his authority under the Geneva Agreement and that the court therefore lacks jurisdiction to adjudicate Guyana's lawsuit. On this basis, Venezuela has indicated that it will not participate in the proceedings. On November 19, 2018, Guyana submitted its memorial to the court refuting Venezuela's arguments and demonstrating that the court has jurisdiction. Under well-established judicial precedent, the court will proceed to decide if it has jurisdiction over Guyana's claims, irrespective of whether or not Venezuela participates in the proceedings. The statement highlighted that if the ICJ decides that it has jurisdiction, open quote, the court will proceed to rule on its merits of those claims and decide whether the validity of the 1899 arbitral award and the border between the two states should be confirmed, end quote. Guyana is hoping that Venezuela participates, indicating their respect for the court and international rule of law, peaceful settlements of disputes, and the promotion of friendly relations between states. For Globespan 24x7 News.
And on Wednesday, President David Granger announced his intention not to dissolve Parliament until he meets with GCOM to find out its absolute readiness to hold elections within the time frame that was given. More in this report.
Solution of Parliament will only occur when I'm satisfied that the entire process, as required by the Election Commission, can move without obstruction until the date that the chairman herself has nominated.
That was President David Granger speaking to the media on the sidelines of an event earlier today. The president stated that although he will stick to the February 2020 elections timeline provided by the GCOM head, he will not dissolve Parliament as he is seeking more information before the move can be made. Granger stated that the letter he received from the chairwoman is one of absolute clarity and certainty on the timeline, but despite this, he still wants more information before he moves forward.
Indicated when the commission would be ready. I responded to her, and I had a discussion with the cabinet yesterday, and naturally we would like to get from her more details. So we've accepted her date, and I hope this evening I'll be able to make a public announcement to the nation on the date.
The head of state disclosed that his government has no interest in going beyond the February 2020 timeline, while at the same time declaring he has not seen the timeline yet, but will meet with the GCOM head to soon discuss the same.
The cabinet has not been privy to the schedule, so there are certain statutory requirements. It's my expectation that in sending me that date, the end of February, they would have taken into consideration all of the requirements, the legal and procedural requirements that have to be met. So I will meet the chairman to find out from her what her timelines are, what her schedules are. But as I said, it's a certainty that we are not interested in going much beyond beyond the time that she has laid down. And I would like to return to Parliament. I'd like to ensure that she has all of the resources the Commission needs, and that she complies with the requirements of the law, including ensuring that it claims and objections.
The delayed announcement of the election date has garnered concerns from members of the international community who issued several statements calling on the president to name an election date. The coalition head has disregarded these statements.
There's no way I could have named the date. There's no way I could have demitted office before I received that letter on the 19th of September. And I wish people in the international community would understand that.
The president is expected to give an update on elections soon. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Also, President David Granger joined with the Mexican ambassador and others from the Mexican embassy to celebrate the 209th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of Mexico in a lavish ceremony on Wednesday at the Guyana Marriott Hotel. We'll tell you more in this report. Guyana's head of state, David Granger, on Tuesday evening joined the Mexican ambassador to Guyana, Jose Omar Hurtado Contreras, in celebration of 209th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of Mexico. At the ceremony, President Granger highlighted that Guyana and Mexico remain committed, as states of the Greater Caribbean, to work together to preserve the hemisphere as a zone of peace.
Guyana and Mexico are committed also to mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs. And to mutual respect to each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty.
The president stressed that these are essential elements of respectful international relations and the foundation for the maintenance of regional peace and security. He further went on to highlight that Guyana is open to exploring export avenues for traditional and non-traditional products in order to strengthen initiatives aimed at increasing bilateral trade.
Guyana looks forward to friendly regional states, such as Mexico, for cooperation as it establishes the regulatory framework to govern the emerging petroleum sector. The three memoranda of understanding concluded on the 15th of March 2017 with the Mexican Institute of Petroleum will assist in building much needed capacity in the petroleum sector.
Meanwhile, Mexican ambassador to Guyana, Jose Omar Hurtado Contreras, delivering his first public address, promised to work towards further strengthening the bonds between the two countries to foster further development.
In keeping with the instruction of the President of Mexico, Manuel López Obrador, I will not only continue the bilateral cooperation, but also intensify it. Moreover, the bilateral economic relations present great opportunities, especially for Mexican investment.
The Mexican ambassador to Guyana was only accredited to Guyana 1 week ago. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan. Meanwhile, in light of mounting criticisms against the actual production sharing agreement that was entered into with ExxonMobil and government, where persons are calling for the need for a judicial review of said contract, political activist Raymond Gaskin has signaled his intention to take this fight to the court. Political activist and social commentator Raymond Gaskin says that a production sharing agreement that was entered into with ExxonMobil's subsidiary, Esso Exploration Production Guyana Limited, is contrary to the Petroleum Act. To this end, Gaskin said legal proceeding challenges to the contract will begin shortly.
For example, the Petroleum Act say you could only get 60 blocks, and ExxonMobil gets 600. So we take that to the judge and let her look at it.
Okay,
so all the things we're talking about is not consonant with the law.
Okay, so in a few weeks' time we can expect this case coming out.
In a few weeks' time we will file.
Gaskin said he doesn't want to pronounce too much on the matter now, but will allow his lawyers to complete their action for a submission to the Supreme Court. But the learned economist highlighted one of the major irregularities with the signed contract.
For example, the Petroleum Act say you could only get 60 blocks, and ExxonMobil gets 600. So we take that to the judge and let her look at it.
According to the Petroleum Act, a license should hold a maximum of 60 blocks. But the license in question grants the oil company and its partners approximately 6 times what is prescribed by law. Gaskin said his intention is to place the contract under judicial review, and that is to ensure Guyana gets a fair deal. Many experts in their field and other pundits have voiced concerns that the deal Guyana got seals no real benefit for the Guyanese people. Gaskin said certain tweaks are being worked out, and then the challenge shall be made public.
In a few weeks' time we will file and you'll get all the details. All the details will be public.
While many have criticized the deal, indicating that Guyana could have negotiated a better one, Gaskin's challenge amounts to one of the very first cases of litigation brought against the signatories of the oil contract. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan. Note, Natural Resources Minister Raphael Trotman has said that Guyana has no legal case to challenge the production sharing agreement between its government and ExxonMobil affiliate, Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, EEPGL, and partners CNOOC Nexon and Hess. Meanwhile, on Thursday, opposition leader Barry Jagdeo says President David Grager's address to the nation managed to cause panic and confusion among several pockets of the Guyanese society, as everyone was prepared to hear a definitive date for elections. Instead, they were given an earliest date.
So therein are several fallacies. One, there is no link to the extension of his life, the life of his government, which has been illegal since March 21st. He never sought that extension before. And the preparation of GCOM for elections. There is no link between that extension and GCOM's preparation for the elections, but he sought to create a link here. Secondly, the extension is wholly unnecessary for him to discharge the caretaker responsibility that had been accorded to him by the CCJ.
Jagdeo noted too that the president sought to link that date with the return to parliament by the parliamentary opposition to extend the life of government.
We would not believe this until we see the signed proclamation that this will be the date for elections, because he's flip-flopped so many times that you never know if this is his final position.
According to the political leader, given the government's interim or caretaker status, its only responsibility is to hold elections. Jagdeo feels that President Granger is seeking an extension not only to blackmail the PPP to go to Parliament and to vote to extend the life of the government, but to allegedly cover what alleged transgressions of theft and other misappropriations may have occurred.
In having to announce a clear date for elections, that was all he was required to do on that night, last night. He left us wondering what he actually said. So this is the same president who was saying, I'm so anxious to have elections. I want to comply with the Constitution. I want to name an election date. But all that is required now is for GCOM to tell me when they'd be ready, and I shall name the date. And then last night, he did not actually name a date. I think he caused panic in the entire media community, including among his own staff.
Despite the president having stated that March 2, 2020 is the definitive date for elections, the PPPC General Secretary and opposition leader says given the president's history of flip-flopping, he does not believe that that date is set in stone, unless there is proper evidence to prove that to be true. Jagdeo went on to say a bit later that he would give the president the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the date he has proposed for election. The president last evening cited March 2, 2020 as the earliest date for general elections, but did not issue a proclamation as is legally required. Granger said that Parliament would meet on October 10 for the purpose of requesting an extension of the 3-month period for the holding of general elections. Also, following an intensive and long overdue investigation, the Ministry of Social Protection, through its Department of Labor, has completed its report into the unjustified dismissal of 2 workers from the Frequency Management Unit over 2 decades ago. More in this report. The 2 senior managers in the persons of Keith Griffith and Robert Ross had been dismissed in 1998 under questionable circumstances from the National Frequency Management Unit. Rather than seek redress through the courts, they appealed internally to President David Granger, who referred the matter to the subject ministry, which is the Ministry of Public Telecommunications. That ministry then collaborated with the Ministry of Social Protection to resolve the matter. Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Telecommunications, Derek Cummins, said the effort was a collaborative one.
I remind that this has been a collaborative effort among many agencies, including the started the Ministry of the Presidency, His Excellency himself, the Attorney General's Chambers, and the Telecoms Agency, which made the payout as a successor agency to the National Frequency Management Unit.
The report determined that, among other things, the men were dismissed due to managerial indecency. Advisor to the Minister, Francis Carroll, said the recommendations of the report will see justice being served, and this is the philosophy of the department.
But what we are concerned with is that the injustices which were inflicted on these men, they were really corrected. And we want to make the point, as I said earlier, that no matter how long it takes, as long as the Ministry of Social Protection is concerned, and once we are involved, we will take as much time. We don't want to take until the end of time, but as long we want to do a thorough job, we will ensure that any and every injustice is overturned. Because we operate on the philosophy that every act of injustice has a shelf life.
The complaint was formally filed in March of 2016, and despite facing numerous challenges in the conduct of their investigations, Carroll said the report recommended that the men must be adequately compensated.
No evidence was unearthed to justify or substantiate the actions taken against the employees. The Ministry of Social Protection in particular, in pursuit of justice, concluded that a grave wrong had been inflicted on the men, and therefore submitted and maintained that it should not be allowed to remain undisturbed. Hence, it was recommended that a certain course of action leading to the compensation of the ex-employees should be taken. That course of action was even endorsed by the Attorney General Chambers. Hence, the Ministry of Social Protection is delighted to announce that the recommendation has been implemented.
Due to privacy restrictions, the actual amount of compensation was not disclosed. The full report emanating from the investigation was officially handed over to the Ministry of Public Telecommunications on Thursday, September 26, in the boardroom at Colgreen House. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan. Separately, the Guyana Cancer Institute has issued a call for more men to take care of their health and get screened for breast cancer. This call was made as the Cancer Institute outlined plans to commemorate Breast Cancer Awareness Month 2019. Shakima Day tells you more in this report.
Breast Cancer Awareness Month, held each year in October, aims to celebrate the lives of those lost while also raising awareness of the disease worldwide. In commemoration of this, the Guyana Cancer Institute has planned several activities to bring awareness to the problem. Dr. Sayan Chakrabarti, Medical Director and Radiation Oncologist at the Cancer Institute, called on men to be wary that breast cancer not only affects women alone, but them also.
I'm talking about since 2006, because I've been coming, initially coming, and then I joined it later on. I have seen a remarkable increase in the awareness and remarkable decrease in patients coming in late stages. Remarkable increase in patients coming for screening, and remarkable decrease in patients coming in later stages, only because the society is more aware of these ailments.
Not only were the men encouraged to screen for breast cancer, but also for prostate cancer, another silent killer.
We men are very much egoistic, so we don't think that we might have cancer. Our body as a man is immune to cancer. Unfortunately, it's not so. One of the most common cancers in men in Guyana is prostate cancer. But fortunately, again, prostate cancer is a kind of cancer which can again be very effectively screened.
Meanwhile, Dr. Syed Ghazi, Medical Outreach Director, relayed that there has been a decrease in the number of patients being diagnosed with breast cancer, with the number dropping from 267 in 2015 to 110 in this year.
Men are not immune to cancer. They also have organs which are very much prone to cancer. As a part of the awareness team, I would also ask men to come forward for their prostate screening, for their colon screening, the colon cancer screening. These are the cancers which, though are more common, but yes, they can be screened and they can be taken up at a really early stage. When they are taken up at a really early stage, they will give a very good result for treatment.
Dr. Ghazi disclosed that the Cancer Institute does not turn away patients who need immediate medical care because they don't have finances. He said all patients have a fair chance at quality health care. The director also encouraged the business community to join in the fight against breast cancer. For 2019, the Cancer Institute will be hosting their annual Cancer Awareness Walk along with a candlelight vigil on the 20th and 25th of October, respectively. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Thank you, Whitney. Namaste, salam, good day everyone. Thanks for tuning into TechBeat right here on Globespan 24x7, and I'm Kumar Doshi coming to you from India. Today I'm going to tell you about Wi-Fi 6. So, it's that time of the year when big tech companies roll out their new smartphones with new features like big screens, multiple cameras, and maybe Wi-Fi 6 support. That makes you want to throw your old phones right into the trash. Now, you might be wondering what is Wi-Fi 6 and what happened to the first 5, and you might be using one of the previous 5 versions. New versions of Wi-Fi are rolled out by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, or better known as IEEE. Wi-Fi names are usually represented by a combination of numbers and alphabets. For example, Wi-Fi 5 is called 802.11ac in the tech realm. So to make it easier for the customers, the next generation of 802.11ax is referred to as Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 would provide speeds of up to 30 times faster than Wi-Fi 5 and about 70% less latency. The IEEE tells that this generation would provide speeds of up to 10 gigabits per second under ideal conditions. So now, streaming a 4K video, playing cloud games will be much easier and without the usual buffering. Also, Wi-Fi 6 will split its network very efficiently and without interruption, unlike the previous generation. This means Wi-Fi 6 will be very useful in crowded places like stadiums and airports. While Wi-Fi 6 is launched, development of Wi-Fi 7 has already begun. That's all for today's Tech Beat. I'm Kumar Doshi. Let's join Samuel in Guyana for more news to come. Thank you for watching. See you soon.
And on Friday, People's National Congress Reform Executive Member Aubrey Norton announced that Guyana's parliament will be dissolved at the right time. We'll tell you more in this report.
The identifying of a date for election is clear evidence that the APNU plus AFC government is not afraid of elections. Unfortunately, the PPP is finding something else to complain about. Clearly, the president can announce a date, but he cannot at this stage dissolve parliament.
That was Senior Executive Member of the People's National Congress Reform, Aubrey Norton, speaking at the party's weekly press briefing. Norton mentioned Article 61 of the Constitution, which states that an election of members of the National Assembly under Article 62 shall be held on such day within 3 months after every dissolution of Parliament, as the President shall appoint by proclamation. Despite the opposition People's Progressive Party Civic repeatedly saying that they will not be returning to Parliament to extend the coalition government's life, President Granger recently issued a call asking for the same.
The government of Guyana has seen through the hidden agenda, and Parliament will be dissolved at the right time.
Norton, in his remarks, praised the coalition head for naming the elections. Noting that the coalition is not afraid of heading to the polls, he encouraged Guyanese to register during the claims and objections period.
We are convinced that the people of Guyana will return President David Granger and the APNU AFC to government.
For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Also on Friday, leader of the Liberty and Justice Party, Lennox Schumann, said the LJP continues to advocate for constitutional reform and that the party would welcome any legislation that addresses campaign financing.
They championed constitutional reform for so long, and then they got there and they did next to nothing to the Constitution. And then the Constitution continued to exist. Why? Because it benefits them. Basically, the Constitution stacks the deck of cards in favor of the governing administration. When you look at the divine right of kings that exists in the Constitution, for example, there is no mechanism to ensure that the president adheres to the Constitution. And you are seeing the realities of that.
Schumann told Globespan 24x7 that he's unsure whether there exists an operational code of conduct that will guide the conduct of political parties. He said due to the dynamics of politics in Guyana, the party has faced its fair share of challenges in this regard. Political financing laws are about protecting the state from corporate and other interests. ensuring that incumbents avoid corrupt use of state resources, including money, and ensuring access to resources for all recognized political parties, among other issues. Political financing laws usually provide mechanisms to facilitate transparency and accountability, which allow citizens to detect instances of corrupt practices. With elections being imminent, it is expected that this will once again be an issue that needs to be addressed, but successive governments have failed to enact any meaningful legislation to alleviate any fears that may exist. But this is not an easy task without due constitutional review, something the LJP promised to address speedily. When questioned on the party's actual plans to ensure constitutional reform is not just a jaded campaign promise, as was seen in the past, Schuman insisted the LJP intends to make more than just cosmetic changes to the supreme law of the land. The LJP leader said both parties are guilty of using the Burnham Constitution to fit their agendas, and that is something the LJP intends to change by having continuous dialogue on the constitutional reform process. Meanwhile, on Friday, the Department of Energy urged all Guyanese, especially the youth, to prepare themselves to take absolute advantage of all the opportunities that will emerge from the nascent oil and gas sector. The department hosted a cultural program for students and several youth groups to mark the arrival of Liza Destiny, FPSO, at the National Cultural Center today. The event featured a number of cultural performances, all aligned with the theme of First Oil. Director of the Department of Energy, Dr. Mark Bino, in his address, noted that the prospect of First Oil is greeted with mixed emotions.
Since Guyana's first commercial oil discovery in May 2015, and the 15 other discoveries since then, we have seen Guyanese move from excitement to cynicism to cautious optimism to growing expectation, and lastly to a dawning realization that Guyana is on the cusp of something great.
Bino relayed that transformational change should not just be a cliche, but a reality. To this end, he urged every Guyanese, especially the youth, be prepared to play their individual roles.
As young people, and I count myself still young, if not in age, at heart, we do have quite an undertaking before us. The journey doesn't begin tomorrow. The journey should have begun yesterday. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana, as a new and emerging energy producer, finds itself in a crucial and unprecedented position in the country's history for a sustained economic growth and development that can benefit both current and future generations. However, to take advantage of this opportunity, optimization of the net benefits from our national patrimony is essential.
This, he stressed, can only be achieved with the requisite regulatory frameworks and human capacity. Dr. Bino added that while there is great benefit to be had, one must exercise due caution.
But all this means nothing to the man who is still without a job, the woman still trying to fill her child's lunch kit, individual looking to move from renting to owning their own homes, the new graduate struggling with a student loan, and public and private sector workers aiming for greater disposable incomes. But these have to be tempered with the realization that these benefits will accrue, but they will accrue over time.
Bino further noted that mere excitement for the oil is not enough, but getting accurate information and critically analyzing it is paramount. He said there needs to be an entire shift in everyone's thinking to truly benefit from this new industry.
But all of this will pale into insignificance unless we appreciate and learn to live together as a nation. Yes. Not judging each other or distributing the proceeds from the oil and gas based on the color of our skins, the texture of our hairs, or our political affiliations, but based on the fact that we are all Guyanese.
The director concluded that oil will not help us if there is certain bias in our decisions. He maintained doing what is right must be the hallmark.
For a moment like this, some nations search forever for this one precious gift.
For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. I'm Kingsley Bryan, wishing you a safe and productive week ahead. Until next time, goodbye.